In the late 1960s and early 1970s, the women's rights movement begins to organize and rally for reproductive freedom and legal abortion. A group of Bay State activists come together to start the Massachusetts Organization to Repeal Abortion Laws, or MORAL, focused on fighting against anti-abortion attacks and expanding abortion access. MORAL becomes an affiliate of what is now NARAL Pro-Choice America.
Before Roe, if you needed an abortion, you probably either had to know somebody who had access to a name and follow that path. And then there was something like pregnancy counseling service, which really did counsel women and send them to Puerto Rico or England to get abortions.
Good evening. In a landmark ruling, the Supreme Court today legalized abortions.
You have the Equal Rights Amendment moving through the Senate and the House. You have Ms. Magazine being started by Gloria Steinem. There's a lot of agitation in America over women's rights.
There was an assumption that if you had a baby, if you were a mother, you were no longer entitled to pursue a career. Abortion rights meant symbolically that women did have choices. Women could say, not now, later, or not at all.
This was in the mid-60s. We were in the middle of the sexual revolution on some level, and yet women didn't have any right to control that. People were beginning to feel empowered about addressing all kinds of things. And could we win? Well, we certainly weren't going to win if we didn't start.
We believe that the right to terminate a pregnancy is a right solely of the woman in consultation with her physician. It's not a right that's shared by anyone else. It's not a right that the state can take away from her.
One of the biggest victories was winning Question 1 back in 1986. Question 1 was an anti-choice amendment that would have outlawed all abortions if Roe v. Wade were ever overturned, and it would have immediately banned state funding for abortions for poor women. Another big victory was passing the buffer zone bill that protected safe access to reproductive health clinics in the state. Because there was tremendous opposition to the bill, it took a lot of effort to get the legislature to be convinced to bring the bill up for a vote.
Governor Patrick has signed a bill designed to tighten security around abortion clinics in Massachusetts.
I thought when I left the organization 10 years ago that I had done everything I could do in the state as executive director, but now I see there's so many new things cropping up and we need to stay vigilant.
In 2010, the Affordable Care Act is signed into law. It represents a huge step forward for women's health, but also spurs states to begin passing anti-choice restrictions at a frenetic pace. Anti-choice sentiment culminates in the 2016 election of Donald Trump, who campaigns on a platform of overturning Roe v. Wade.
This is the moment of the beginning of the revival of the women's movement. We are not turning back.
Once in office, Trump takes steps to restrict reproductive freedom. He reinstates the global gag rule, nominates an anti-choice judge to the Supreme Court, and guts the contraceptive coverage mandate. Massachusetts immediately responds.
The Affordable Care Act guaranteed that women across the country would get access to copay-free contraceptive coverage. And anti-choice extremists made it their business to try to overturn that policy. We were the first state in the nation after the Trump administration rescinded the copay-free contraceptive rule to guarantee that women in this state will have unfettered access to copay-free contraceptive coverage.
I grew up at a time when there were backstreet abortions. That Roe would fall in my lifetime would be probably one of the worst things that I could possibly envision.
On the other hand, I read recently a Gallup poll showed 48% of women identify themselves as pro-life, 45% as pro-choice.
If you ask the question the way it should be asked, without those confusing terms, which are quite backward, which is who makes the decision, a woman and her physician or the government, the huge majority, over 60%, say it should be the woman and her physician, not the government. And that's the point.
I think we're talking about this now because what's happening in Washington is making us realize that a lot of years have elapsed, almost 50, And yet, the same threats that we saw in the 70s are back.
NARAL Pro-Choice Massachusetts is an affiliate of NARAL Pro-Choice America. We are the grassroots advocacy organization fighting for reproductive freedom in Massachusetts because we believe that reproductive freedom is a Massachusetts value. We want to hear the voices of everyone in Massachusetts, not just a small group of engaged people.
We need you to stand with us. We need you out there knocking on doors. We need you making phone calls. We need you contacting your state representatives and senators. We need you alongside us fighting for reproductive freedom. Without your help, change won't happen.
The values that I have as a mom are the same values that I have as the executive director of NARAL Pro-Choice Massachusetts. I want my kids to grow up with choices. I want the kids in Massachusetts to grow up with choices. I want everyone to have access to the healthcare services that they need in order to have the kind of life that they want to have. I'm fighting for those values for the women and children of Massachusetts, but I'm also fighting for those values for two kids named Maeve and Calvin.
I cannot tell you how enraging it is for me to have fought the fight in the 60s and 70s and have to fight it again in 2018. We can't take our eye off the ball for a minute.